Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I know Christine will be getting started soon. Christine, I think you might be on mute right now, but thank you all for joining today. Christine will be introducing herself, and this is Kelsey Anchor, and I will be introducing myself a little bit later. So I'll turn it over to Christine.
Yes, thank you very much. I was on mute. Sorry about that. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christine Heel, the Director of Tax and Compliance. As you heard from our Kelsey Anchor, so we'd like to welcome you all to our year-end toolkit presentation. We will be recording this session, and a copy of the presentation has been added to the handout section. Today, we'll be going through what to review prior to December 31st. We'll talk about the types of returns you may have out in SecureView, year-end tax forms, and how to read them. Then I'll be turning it over to Kelsey, and she will be going through the year-end newsletter, the COVID assistance page, and the Paycheck Protection Program. There are a few areas that you'll want to review prior to the end of December. So we'll go through the company level and employee level data and some of the report options available. So first up is your company demographics. To navigate to your company demographics, you'll head over to the company profile and select demographic. From here, you'll confirm the information that is all correct. The address and the FEIN listed here is what's pulled onto your returns and what is shown on your year-end tax forms, your W-2s or 1099s. So you'll want to make sure that the address is correct and obviously your FEIN is correct. Next is your tax setup. You'll find this under your payroll setup taxes. These are all the taxes that we are filing on your behalf. If a state is listed here and you no longer have employees or your account is closed, or you may have requested the state to be added in anticipation of hiring and didn't hire that employee, just let us know. It is very important to keep this information up to date. We don't want to be sending out returns when an account has been closed and potentially reopen that account. Like I said, it's important to keep it up to date. If you have any changes, just let your client advocate know. You should also be reviewing your account numbers. So that's the numbers that are listed under the EIN column. These numbers are what is put onto your returns and for withholding and federal, your W-2s. If you have any that are listed as applied for, you'll need to contact the state to obtain your account number, and you definitely want to do that before the end of year. Most states do not accept returns or payments without a valid account number, which will create tax issues for you down the road. If you need any of the state information, visit our employer resource page at payentry.com. There you'll find phone numbers, websites, information on registering, as well as any power of attorney or third-party access information that's required. You should also be reviewing your frequencies and rates, and you can do this by selecting the View Edit button on the right of each tax code. Once selected, a pop-up screen is shown here as it's displayed on the screen. By navigating to the deposit section, you can view your deposit frequency, and for unemployment codes, you can view your rate information. At this time of the year, you may receive letters from the agencies stating that your frequency has changed for 2021 or your rate has changed. By looking here in your setup, you'll know whether or not you need to send that letter to your team to be updated. This is also where you can verify after you've sent in a request that the change has been made. Now we'll look at employee level data. I'm sure you know how important it is for employees to review their name, address, social security numbers. Any incorrect demographic usually will come up after W-2s are issued, causing extra costs to the employer. So one way is to have your employees review their name and address on My Pay Entry. Another is running a report, and there are a few reports that you could use. The employee listing report is a condensed way of looking at employee data. It's a good report to quickly review state withholding and unemployment setup for each employee. You can customize the report to add an additional field depending on what else you'd like to audit. The employee profile report is more of a detailed report. It has one employee per page and shows their name, address, social security number, in addition to their employee and their employer tax setup. So it's the ideal report if you want to have employees sign off on their information. The reports that's available in NextGen for you to run does contain rate information. So if you're wanting to use this report but do not want to have the rate information populated, you can reach out to your client advocate and they can run it and send it over to you. Next is the W-2 edit report. You'll find that on this report, the company demographics and tax account information, as well as employee demographics with social security numbers. It's really a great report to quickly scan for invalid social security numbers. Now, understanding your taxes. So each quarter, your tax returns are sent to SecureView into the corresponding quarter end folder. The best way to view your returns is by updating your filter by to tax forms. Whether you file a 944 or a 941, you'll always find those related returns under the codes for FITW. Anything related to your 940, you'll find under anything related that says FUTA. Your withholding returns have SITW in the name, and any annuals will have at the end of the naming convention an ANN. Any unemployment returns are labeled as SUI, and there are two parts of an unemployment return. You have your contribution report and a wage report, which is indicated by a C or a W on in your SecureView. Contribution report is sort of like a summary, and it shows your total wages, taxable wages, it'll have your rate and the amount due. Whereas your wage report is a listing of all your employees' wages that are in for that state and their associated social security number, or it could have any other required data from the state, maybe weeks worked or something of that manner. There are two reports that I would recommend when reconciling to your returns, the payroll summary report and the labor distribution report. I'm sure most of you are familiar with these reports. The payroll summary report, when ran for the quarter or the year to date, you can see your taxes, your total wages, taxable wages, and the withheld amounts. If the wages for a tax code and the related taxes are different, it could be an indicator that an employee is set up incorrectly. So it is important not only to look at the report on a quarterly basis, but to review your payroll summary after every payroll. The report will also show tax deferrals for the employer's Social Security, as well as any CARES or retention credits. The labor distribution report can be ran in a summary or detailed format. When you run it as a detail, you'll see all the earnings, deductions, and taxes for each employee. This report is the best report to use to determine where the wages are or the taxable wages are coming from. So now I'm going to pull up a 941 and review how it relates to the labor distribution report. So here, as I said, here are the demographics information. So this is pulling from your company demographics. You'll have on this side what quarter that we're filing for. Your line 1, we do get questions every once in a while about the number of employees reported here. So you want to remember that the system, it's pulling the number of employees that were paid in a pay period that included the 12th of the last month of the quarter. So for fourth quarter, the number of employees listed here would be the number of employees paid during a pay period that included December 12th. Your line 2, you would reconcile this against your FIT, your FITW wages on your labor distribution, and the FITW amount on your labor distribution. Going down to the 5A, so you have column 1, 5A through 5B. These amounts, when totaled together, should reconcile to your SS wages on your labor distribution. And the amounts on column 2 from 5A through 5B should reconcile to your SS and your SSR tax amounts. So you want to add those two amounts together to come back to these figures. Now your 5AI and 5AII, these will all reconcile to any associated CRA codes that you have set up in the system. So if you're paying CRA wages, as long as they're tied to a CRA sick, CRA care, or the CRA child leave, those amounts will show up in these two fields. If you have taxable Social Security tips, if you're paying wages and that are coded to an earn type for tips, those wages will appear in column 1B, 2B, or column 2, 5B. And for your taxable Medicare wages, column 1, 5C, that will reconcile to your MED wages on your labor distribution. And for your column 2, for the amount, you would add your MED and your MEDR amounts together to come back to this amount. And continuing on, there's a number of other lines. So line 7 is typically any type of rounding, fractions of the cents, any type of variance may appear on line 7. So it's normal to see variances here. If there's a large variance, it could, there's times where it's valid and there's times where it's not valid. So if there is a variance, you want to question it. Your line 8 will show any sick pay. If you record any sick pay payments in the system, that will show here. Line 9 is your group term life insurance. And then as we get more down into the 941, it goes into a lot of the credits and how it relates to the worksheet. Line 11A relates to your 8974. If you're a business that qualifies for the research and development credit, you want to make sure that you provide that 8974 to the team, as that is needed to be filed along with your 941. And we would use that information to be able to populate your credit on line A or 11A. Line 11B and C are both taken from the worksheet, which I'll go through in a little bit. On your second page of your 941, goes more into credits again. So you have line 13B is the deferred amount of Social Security. So this amount you should be able to reconcile back to either your payroll summary or your COVID assistance page. Again, 13C and 13D all come from the worksheet, which is found on page 5. 13F, if you filed a form 7200, you would need to let your client advocate know. We do need that information, one, to be able to populate it on the 941, but as I'll go through later on in the presentation, the CRA wages are reported on the W-2, so if we don't have that indicated in the system, the employee's W-2 may not be correct. Any overpayments will show on line 15. So if you are receiving any of the care credit or the FFCRA credits, and your credit exceeds your federal liability and there's an overage, that overpayment will show on line 15 and you would be receiving a refund from the IRS directly. On page 3 goes more into your health plan expenses that are related to the qualified sick leave wages, family leave wages, as well as the employer retention credit. So to report the qualified health plan expenses for the sick leave wages, you would just record that in an earning that is tied to a memo CRA INSCR code. Anything tied to that will populate in line 19. Any earnings tied to the memo CRA FAM expense will be populated in line 20, and the same for qualified employee retention credit. If you have any earnings that you have tied to the EERET credit CR or the memo EERET CR, those wages will populate on line 21. And if you have expenses relating to your health plan for the employee retention, that would be coded, that would be added into an earning coded to a memo EERET EXP, and that would populate on line 22. Your page 4 of your 941 is just your Schedule B. It's the listing of all of your liabilities. This is what the IRS determines and looks at to determine whether or not your taxes are paid timely. So this page is very important. We want this to be correct. Any type of mishap on this page could cause an erroneous notice. And your page 5 this goes into the worksheet. So this is not reported or filed with the IRS. This is for your records only, and it goes through the calculation of how those numbers on the 941 come about. So all the numbers here are tied to the fields on the 941, which you can then tie back to your labor distribution. And then it goes step by step on how the calculation is done when it relates to, so in step 2, how it relates to your sick leave wages. It pulls in the employer's share of medical, and it gives you your total amount of your credit for your sick leave wages. All of this information is then calculated out and then put onto your 941. So now understanding our W-2. Box 1 is your total federal taxable wages. The most common question we get asked is, why are my wages on my W-2 less than what I make a year? So when looking at the W-2, we always want to take into account any pre-tax deductions. 401k deductions will not be included in your federal and state wages. Any cafeteria Section 125 plan deductions will not be included in your federal FICA, which is your Social Security and Medicare, or in most cases, state wages. There are some caveats to the state wage rule. Your box 3 and 5, again, are gross wages, less cafeteria Section 125 plan deductions. The wages in box 3 could be higher than what's reported in box 1. Box 3 should never exceed the Social Security wage base, which for 2020 is $137,700. Your box 5 does not have a wage base, and it could be higher than box 1 and 3. So for your employees who make under the wage base, box 3 and 5 should always be the same. You shouldn't have a difference in box 3 and 5 if you have employees that are making under $137,700. Box 10 is to report the amount paid under a dependent care assistance program. Your box 12, the most common codes that we see here are your 12C for the taxable cost of group term life. 12D is your 401k deferrals, and 12W to report the employer contributions, including employee contributions, if those deductions are through a cafeteria plan for an HSA account. And then new for 2020 is the reporting of the FFCRA wages in box 14. 14 is typically, you can put anything you want in there. If you want to put, an amount for reimbursement to show employees that they've been reimbursed, you can put that there. It's not a mandatory field, but for 2020, it is going to be used to report the FFCR wages, which is another reason why if you, that you need to let us know if you've been filing the Form 7200. So next, the 1099. So if you are using PayEntry to report your 1099 MISC, you should know that in 2015, the PATH Act accelerated the due date for filing Forms 1099. That includes the non-employee compensation, which was box 7 from February 28th to January 31st. Beginning this year, Form 1099 NEC is required to report non-employee compensation. The 1099 MISC has been revised and some box numbers have been rearranged for certain income reporting. For example, gross proceeds paid to an attorney is now reported on box 10, where it was formerly box 14. So again, if you're already using PayEntry to pay your 1099 recipients, you will not have to do anything different in the system. Just depending on your organization, if you are issuing both a 1099 NEC and a 1099 MISC, you will receive both copies in Secure View. So my last topic before I turn it over to Kelsey is just a reminder on the W-4. As you may or may not know, the form was redesigned in 2019 due to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So the allowances are no longer used for the redesigned form. And in the past, the value of withholding allowances was tied to the amount of the personal exemptions an employee could claim. Due to that change in the law, personal exemptions and dependency exemptions have been eliminated. So employers are not required to obtain new forms from their existing employees. All new employees and existing employees who wish to adjust their withholding should be using the redesigned form. There's a link here that I provided to the IRS withholding estimator. Employees can use this to assist in completing the form. It's good for all employees to be aware of, especially if you had anyone come back and say that they had to pay taxes or didn't withhold enough. It's always a good reminder halfway through the year as well for employees to use the estimator to do a paycheck checkup and see where they're at, especially if they had any life changes, if they bought a house, got married, had children, anything like that. It's always a good reminder for employees. And now I will turn it over to Kelsey.
Thanks, Christine. I'm just going to get my screen pulled up here. And you should see the PayEntry website. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelsey Anker. I'm our Chief Operating Officer at PayEntry. Wanted just to take a few minutes to talk about the year-end newsletter that we sent out, the COVID assistance page that was developed this year, and also the PPP forgiveness report. So I'll start right here. We're at our PayEntry website, and underneath the resources section, there is a tab called Employer Resources. A couple things to highlight before we get to the newsletter. We do put a lot of information out on the website. Christine mentioned a lot about the FFCRA codes. We have a guide out here that will tell you when to use the codes. What we've done for each client is we've already added these codes for you available in PayEntry. So you'll use this guide to help determine when you need to use each code if you've had an employee out due to coronavirus, or having to care for a child or a family member. Again, you can always reach out to your client advocate as well. Also on the website, we do have a section for tax information. So depending what state you're in, this is a good resource to, if you need to open an account in a new state, this will give you the instructions on what you need to do. So here we've got the year-end newsletter. So I've got this open in another tab. So this is interactive. So we sent this out earlier in November. We would ask that you send it back to us by the 11th if you think you may need to place your account on a year-end hold. And what that means is that when we go through our first round of producing W-2s and 1099s, that we don't include your account in that because you may have certain items that need to be recorded. So this checklist will take you through yes or no. Do you have third-party sick pay that might need to be entered? Are you an S Corp where you have to provide health insurance and you haven't reported that to pay entry, so it hasn't been entered into payroll? So there are a bunch of different questions here that may cause you to need to have your account placed on hold. And so you'll see with the date section here, we're asking for the checklist to be back by the 11th. What we'll do is January 2nd is when we start calculating. So if you haven't placed your account on hold, then we'll be calculating your W-2s. If your account is on hold, that gives you time to get that third-party sick pay or other items recorded, and then we'll remove those holds on January 7th and then begin calculating again. So there's a lot of good information in the newsletter, some webinars. We've got one in January about releasing online tax forms. If you haven't encouraged your employees to enroll in online tax forms, definitely do so. They get their tax forms much quicker and can see them online. A lot of the information here does go very much hand in hand with what Christine has covered today, but definitely review the information, and if you have any questions, reach out to your client advocate. The second thing I wanted to highlight is inside of pay entry, we have created a PPP forgiveness report. Christine earlier was talking about reports. So I'm in a demo company here, and underneath the report section, just showing, I know there was a question that came through about reports. So what Christine was showing is under Secure View, this is where your payroll reports will go after each payroll runs. But you can filter and say, just show me the folders with my tax forms or my year-end reports. This company doesn't have any, but you can certainly filter inside of Secure View and pull certain information that you're looking for. Underneath the company report section, if you type in the search box, PPP, there is a PPP forgiveness report. What I really wanted to highlight today is there are a lot of different settings that are available on the report. So the first item is the date range. So what you're going to put, the date that you select, so I'm going to override the dates and say I want to type a date in. So the date that I'm typing in here is the date that I want the report to be the start of when I received the funds and the date that you want to use to start your coverage period. So that could be the date you received it, the pay period following, but this is the date that you put in here of when you want to say this is the start of my coverage period. There are a lot of advanced options. A couple I'll point out. One, include final pay period. So because of the PPP loan and there wasn't a lot of clarity on what happens if you get your loan mid-pay period, you have different ways to filter the report where if the 8 weeks still has a few days left in the pay period, you can include that or not. We can prorate it. So there's a lot of different options. So definitely reach out to your client advocate and we can help you with the report. Covered weeks, you can change it to 8 or 24. But this report is to help you in completing whatever application that you have with your bank. So this report is to help with that. It may not be the have everything you need, but it should assist you with that application. If you have employees that are salaried and they don't have hours recorded, you can check this box and it will treat them as a full-time employee. The last thing I did want to share is from your main menu underneath quick links, you all will have a link that says COVID-19 assistance. This is a page that was put together to help you see here's any all the dollar amount that's been paid under the FFCRA, and then also the tax credits that you've received, because it's a dollar for dollar tax credit plus the employer portion of Medicare. Then if you did defer Social Security for the CARES Act, you'll be able to see what has been deferred as well. So this is just a helpful resource page that we put together. Again, feel free to reach out anytime to us. We're here to help. We can help show you what's available and answer any questions that you may have. With that, we'll turn it back over to Christine and give us just a minute. We'll look through the question chat box. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them there. If it's something we may need to reach out to you individually, we will certainly do that if we either need to do additional research or talk specific regarding your company.
Awesome, thank you. So let's see, I'm going through looking at questions. So one question was about the reports and if there's a cheat sheet. So you can get the copy of this presentation that goes into the reports. I'll look to see if there's anything that we have that has kind of like a detail of all the reports that are out in NextGen, and see if we can get something like that out to you.
I see a question. Can you use the payroll codes to track FFCRA pay but not take the credits? So you only want to use, if you use the CRA sick, CRA child leave, or CRA dependent care, if you record any hours or earnings in those codes, it will apply the credit. But you can always reach out to us and we can add a new earning code for you that doesn't apply the credit, and then you can track the hours that way. I see a question about if you received the PPP loan, should you not use the COVID codes? So I am checking with our Senior VP of HR Services, but I believe you can still use them. They just don't count towards the forgiveness. But I will clarify on that.
I see a question for, do we need to manually add the box 14 on the FML, the credit codes? Sorry about that. And the answer is no. Our development team is working on having that added behind the scenes, so you won't have to go in and do any type of adjustments or additions to your setup.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. If you do have any, again, please let us know. We appreciate you all being a client, and we're here to help. So with that, we hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.